and welcome once again to my channel. My name is Sakshi Nelson and this is my channel called Days of Hope. I have indeed come after a long time, and that is because I was on a break, and I took a break on purpose because I just don't want to come and preach and teach anything, but I would do that only when the Spirit of God perfectly guides me into preaching something that is totally in the wisdom and grace of God. And before I begin speaking and preaching today's message, I would like to thank all my subscribers who have been watching, and to please subscribe to my channel. Those who are listening for the first time, you can like it and share it if the Spirit of the God leads you into listening to my message further. And I am here today to share a message with you from a book in the Old Testament, which I'm sure you must have heard many times in your church, in conventions, in ladies' meetings, in various other setups of your church. And I can assure you that by the time we reach to the end of this message, you will be amazed what God has really uh, given me his wisdom to understand this chapter and understand it with a different insight. And I am talking about the chapter and the book of Ruth. Ruth is one such woman in the Old Testament whom you would hear many pastors and preachers giving you examples of how good and how uh, a perfect example of what a good daughter-in-law, and they would give you the example of Ruth. And without a doubt, Ruth is indeed a great daughter-in-law, and many a times you would have been told, or you would have been advised to read the book of Ruth and see what great bond her mother-in-law Naomi and Ruth share, and how close Ruth is, and she never leaves her mother-in-law's side. But today I will share with you some amazing things that the Lord has revealed unto me, and you will be amazed. Please listen to this message with an open heart, because this message is entirely going to lead you to God. It is going to lead you to Jesus, and let the Holy Spirit open your hearts and minds to understand this message with a different insight. It is going to be a bit long message, but I will try and keep it as short as possible. But this is an amazing chapter that uh, uh, you will be hearing from me today with a different insight. And I'm sure by the time you read the listen to the end, or come to the end of this message, by listening to the complete message, you would get a different insight that what actually the book of Ruth speaks about. Many pastors and preachers will tell you that this book only shares the information of what a great relationship her mother-in-law and her daughter-in-law shared, and one must be like Naomi and one must be like Ruth. The pastors would tell you that what kind of a woman Ruth was, and what kind of a daughter-in-law Ruth was, and you must learn to be like her. The Bible clearly states an example, which I do not deny. Of course, Ruth has indeed proved herself, and I'm sure you've read the chapter, I'm sure you heard the story, but no preacher ever told you what kind of a mother-in-law Naomi was to Ruth, in which could lead Ruth to be a good daughter-in-law to her mother-in-law. It's a plain example of any mother to her child. If you want your child to behave well with you, it must completely be that the parent also behaves completely respectfully, deal with the child. For if you disrespect even a small child, the child will also not respect you. So it's the same. It's just exactly what the Bible quotes and shares about Naomi, that Ruth and Naomi could share a beautiful relationship, not only because Ruth was a good woman, but because Naomi was a woman of God. And before I start preaching, I would like to take your attention to the book of Ruth, chapter 1. Now, verses 1, 2, and 3, it is a very big chapter, a very big story. Of course, I wouldn't have the time to read each verse, But if we see chapter 1 verse 1, we see the opening of the story, that there was a famine, there was a huge famine in the days when the judges ruled. There was famine in the land, and there was a certain man of Bethlehem, that Judah went to sojourn in the country of Moab, he and his wife and his two sons. Okay, so we see the opening of the story. Okay, it seems a very basic opening to the story, that there is this man. Okay, now you must understand every aspect. Like I said, the spirit has really guided me verse by verse in this book, and I cannot give you explanation for every verse, but I will give you the explanation for the key verses that will help you understand the outer picture and the main frame of the story. The main frame of the story is not only the relationship between Naomi and Ruth, not only the relationship between a mother-in-law and a daughter-in-law, but it is indeed something else. It is a purpose that God has set, and that is exactly what the Lord is going to disclose today through this chapter, through these verses. So we see that the story opens that there is this family in Bethlehem. There was famine in the land in the time when the judges ruled, and um, uh, uh, as far as I remember, there were two judges name that I can remember, one being Samson and one being Deborah. They were the judges that ruled in the land of Israel. And there was a great famine. There was a great famine, and in the land of Bethlehem, Bethlehem is called the house of bread, and they went to sojourn. Sojourn means when you are leaving your own home country, and but because there is a famine, so you cannot stay there anymore. So you go out to explore new places where you can feed your family, stay off the course where where there is famine. You need not stay there. You're going and traveling into another country with the intention of coming back. So that was the purpose. They were not leaving Bethlehem forever, but they were leaving Bethlehem because there was a crisis, there was a famine. And Elimelech, with his wife Naomi, with his two sons, Malon and Chilion, and their two daughter-in-laws. Okay, so this is the entire picture that we get. Okay, now the opening story, Naomi with her husband Elimelech and with her two sons, they leave the country to sojourn new lands where they could feed family, where they could live and stay off this famine that had hit Bethlehem. And then later, through verses 6 onwards, we see that the story has entirely changed, because over verses 1 to 5, though it may seem so short, but a lot is happening between verses 1 to 5. Okay, we see that Ruth and the other daughter-in-law, naming Orpah, they were not from the land of Bethlehem, they were from the land of Moab. Okay, they were Moabitized women, and the verse 4 says, now they took two wives of the women of the Moab. The name of the one was Orpah and the name of the other was Ruth. So first things first, do understand that Ruth was not from a Christian family. She was not a person who knew the living God. She was a woman who worshipped pagan gods. She was a woman from a foreign land. It was strictly prohibited in the book of Deuteronomy that one must not marry. And the sons of Elimelech, that is Malon and Chilion, they get married to Moab women, that is Ruth and Orpah. They were not women who knew the living God. They were women who were from the land of Moab, and Moab was a pagan, was a foreign land who worshipped pagan gods and did not, they had nothing to do with the living God. So basically, Ruth and Orpah worshipped foreign gods. So this is the outline of the entire story. Now, in verses 6 onwards, we see that over here a lot has happened again. She has lost her husband. Naomi has lost her husband. She has lost her two sons as well. Okay, so again, like I said, a lot is happening between verses 1 to 5. She leaves out the land, Naomi with her husband. She leaves out the land. She leaves the land with her two sons. Um, Through the years, the sons get married to a Moab women, and through the years, Naomi loses her husband and she becomes a widow. Then further, we see that again she has lost her sons, so now Ruth and Orpha has also become widow. Now we have three women, Naomi, Ruth and Orpha, three women who are widowed, three women who have lost their husbands. Okay, now you have to understand that this story is not only center focused on Ruth, but everybody surrounding Ruth, that is Naomi, Orpha, and further in the story Boaz. They are all a part of Ruth's purpose. They are all a part of Ruth's life, because God has a purpose for Ruth. Okay, so what do we see in verses 6? It says that she arose with her daughters-in-law that she might return to the country of Moab, because that is one of the reasons. Okay, for she had heard that in the country of Moab that the Lord had visited his people in giving them bread. Therefore, she went out from the place where she was, and her two daughters in law with her, and they went on the way to return to the land of Judah. That means they had made up a plan. Naomi had heard that God was doing wonders and miracles and providing bread to the to the people where there was famine, and so she made up her mind that she will not stay in the land of Moab, in the land of pagan gods. uh, but she's going to return to the house of bread. She's going to return to Bethlehem. So from here we see that the main characters in the story begin with an actual conversation. Till now there was no conversation. We just get the outline. Okay, so now she arose and then she starts making speeches. She starts speaking. Now I want you to first focus on Naomi. Okay, and as I said in the beginning, that many pastors and preachers would tell you about the behavior of Ruth and what kind of a daughter-in-law Ruth was, but one must understand that Ruth could not have been a good daughter-in-law till Naomi was a great mother-in-law to her. Because I told you in the beginning that Ruth was not born in a Christian family. She was not born in a family who knew the living God. She had not heard the miracles and wonders of God. She had not known the living God. She just married the men. Okay, and here the Bible does not specify what kind of men Mahlon and Chilion were and how close they were to God. Okay, so we do not know how close they were as husband and wife and how strong was their bond with God while they were married. Okay, so you have to understand that Naomi's character and behavior is very important, and one must not only focus on Ruth, but we must understand what kind of a woman Naomi was. And if you did not know, Naomi means pleasant. Naomi, the word Naomi means pleasant, someone who is very pleasant. There are people, certain people, when you sit with them and talk with them, you feel pleasant, you feel happy, you feel relaxed, you feel positive, you feel charged, and you feel happy, and there is peace and comfort. So she was that kind of a woman, and that is why her name is Naomi. For Naomi means pleasant. She's a pleasant woman. Okay, and she's a woman who is pleasant. Now how she's pleasant, I will read certain verses so that you understand what kind of a bond Ruth could share with Naomi, because they had been staying for years, and I'm very sure that Ruth must have noticed something or few things about Naomi that Ruth would had liked to inculcate, that Ruth would have tried to become like Naomi. She would have seen what kind of a strong woman Naomi is, a woman who has lost her husband, a woman who has lost two sons, to be a widow and to be a woman who has lost two young sons, to be motherless is the greatest pain a woman could ever go through. And Ruth was noticing this. Even Orpha was noticing it. But again, they were Moab women. They were from a land of pagan gods, people who worshipped pagan gods. Okay, so verses 6 onwards, I will try and explain you. I will quote you the verses because I would not have the time to read the entire verses. Number one, Naomi was keen about God. How do we know this? In verse 6, she says, we read that she arose with her daughters that she might return from the country of Moab, for she had heard that in the country of Moab, that the Lord had visited his people in giving them bread. She had heard of God's favor. That means she was keen. She was keen about hearing the mysteries and miracles that the living God was doing. She had heard from people. She sat in the company of people who spoke things about the living God. So she was keen about God. Okay. Then in next verse, okay, number 8, she says, Naomi said to her two daughters-in-law, go, return each to your mother's house. The Lord deal kindly with you as you have dealt with the dead and with me. Naomi remembered, okay? Naomi appreciated. She appreciated the behavior of Ruth and Orpha, and she says to her two daughter-in-laws that she blesses them with her heart. She blesses them with her clean and pure heart, that the Lord bless you and keep you. And I saw how you treated me when I was a woman who lost a husband, and when I was going through a hard time when I lost my two sons. Okay, the Lord deal kindly with you as you have dealt with the dead and with me. You have dealt with the dead and with me. That means Ruth and Orpha dealt with Naomi in the most kindest way, in the most passionate way, in the most close way, and Naomi remembered that. She was grateful. She was a mother in law who was close to God. She sat in the company who spoke things about God. She was a woman and a mother in law who was grateful for her daughters in law who took care for her in times of distress and need. This is the two things, character, main important character we see about Naomi. Later, again in verses 9, she continues to bless them and she says, the Lord grant that you may find rest each in the house of her husband. Okay, she says and tells them that you may find rest, you may find peace. Okay, so basically she had this concept that yes, Ruth and Orpha would be someone who would have to get remarried. Naomi was not a woman who would say, oh God, I'm left a woman who has no husband, I'm left a woman who has no sons. God, who is going to take care of me? Please don't leave me and go away. She didn't do that. She understood the concept of space. She understood the concept of remarriage. She understood that she could not bear sons anymore and give sons to Ruth and Orpha for them to get married and remarried. Because further in the verses, if you come to verses 10, 11, 12, 13, she says that even if I got married today, even if I got married today, even if God gave me sons, would you wait for them to get married? She was a practical woman. She knew what she was talking, and she insists Ruth and Orpha to go back to their mothers, go back to the land of where they came, go back to their gods. Okay, and in verse 14 we see they lifted up their voice and wept. They lifted up their voice and wept. Now we see over here emotional conversations taking place. Now Naomi of course wouldn't want her daughters-in-law to leave. She would have loved them. That is why she blessed them, and she says, may you be happy, may you be blessed, may you find rest in your new homes and whoever you get married to. Okay, but we see them crying over here. That means it shows that she was affectionate. She loved, she was affectionate towards her daughter-in-laws. She was affectionate towards them. She was loving towards them. They all loved each other. There were emotions. There was empathy. There was empathy. And where there is emotions, there are feelings, there is a bond, there is a relationship. Okay, so Ruth could be a good daughter-in-law. Orpha could be a good daughter-in-law because Naomi shared that bond with them. also she addresses them as daughters. Okay, if you read verse 12, okay, and a couple of further verses, she will say, turn back, my daughters, go your way, for I am too old to have a husband. So a couple of times she even addresses them daughters. So she does not consider them only as in-laws, daughter-in-laws, but she considered them as her own daughters. Okay, so this is the outline of what kind of a woman Naomi was. She was a godly woman. She was a woman who sought God, who wanted to hear things of God, that what great things God had done. Okay, and she was very passionate about going back to the homeland where she actually belonged from, that is Bethlehem. And as I told, Naomi means pleasant. Now, coming to verse 15, okay, now from verse 15, the entire focus from Naomi singularly comes to Ruth, because Ruth over here makes a declaration. If you've noticed in your Bibles, the words that she speaks has been put in double inverted commas. That means it is a very important quote unquote kind of a message. And Ruth is not making a dialogue here. She's not preaching her love to her mother in law. She's not preaching, oh, I love you so much. Of course, those are the feelings that are involved. We have already seen, because they are crying and hugging and weeping. Okay, and also we see that Orpha has returned. By this time, Orpha has returned to her land. Mother-in-law tells, see, your sister-in-law, she has gone. She has gone back to her motherland. She has gone back to the gods that she worshipped. And then Ruth makes the statement. Okay, she makes a declaration. But Ruth said, entreat me not to leave you or turn back from following after you, for wherever you go, I will go. Where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God, my God. This is where the power comes from. Declaration. Ruth, these words were not just from Ruth. These were the words that were filled in Ruth's heart, because she was in that situation, because she was so distressed. She did not want to leave her mother-in-law, and she was so filled up that God put words in her mouth, and she makes a declaration. Even if she did not know what living God could have done for her, but Ruth over here has a huge purpose. The purpose was not to stay and linger with her mother-in-law and serve her, but Ruth had a different purpose, because she makes a declaration. Your people, Orpha has gone back to her people, gone back to her pagan gods, gone back to her motherland. From the land of Moab she was. But Ruth says that your land shall be my land, your people shall be my people, and your God shall be my God. She was ready and willing to follow the living God. She chose the living God over the pagan gods, because she must have noticed something about Naomi that was so powerful that Ruth could not leave her. So next time someone tells you that what great woman Ruth was, you please tell them that Ruth could be great because Naomi was even more greater to Ruth. Naomi was great, and Ruth must have noticed something splendid, something pleasant about Naomi that Ruth wanted to imbibe, that Ruth wanted to enhance in her, that Ruth wanted to become like Naomi. Isn't that amazing? It is absolutely fascinating to me, and it does not end here. She is making a declaration, and once Naomi notices this and she hears these words, she stops. She stops forcing Ruth to go back. She stops speaking to her. She stops telling her, okay, go back. She keeps quiet. Now, a lot has happened again. Ruth, along with Naomi, they are returning back in chapter 2. If you see, they are returning back to their homeland. If you come towards chapter 2, this is the picture that you get. And before you reach chapter 2, there is again a huge, power filled revelation that is taking place. Okay, now let's read this, because this is great. Verses 19 onwards. Now the two of them went until they came to Bethlehem. That means from Moab, they had come back to the house of bread. They had come to Bethlehem. And it happened when they had come to Bethlehem that all the city was excited because of them. And the women said, "Is this Naomi?" And see what Naomi says. She said to them, "Do not call me Naomi." That means she isn't pleasant anymore. Call me Mara. Mara in Bible, it means bitter, a woman who is filled with bitterness. And bitterness does not come from hatred, but bitterness comes from brokenness. Naomi was coming back a woman who was bitter. Okay, how? We read further. "Do not call me Naomi, call me Mara, for the Almighty has dealt very bitterly with me. I went out full." She talks of the day that she left with her husband and with her two sons. So she went out from the land of Bethlehem to the land of Moab while there was a famine, that she went out full, and I am coming home again empty. She comes again empty. She has lost her husband, lost her two sons. Orpha has gone back, and only Ruth and Naomi are there. Why do you call me Naomi? So Naomi returned. And Ruth the Moabitess, her daughter-in-law, with her, who returned from the country of Moab. Now they came to Bethlehem at the beginning of barley harvest. It was the season of harvest. That means the season was about to change. In waking life also, harvesting means a new season is coming. It is the period of harvesting crops, and over here it is the season of harvesting barley. That means the season was about to change. Now the words of Ruth, that where you go I will go, the declaration that you have read in verses 16 and 17, and the words of Naomi, "Do not call me Naomi now, but call me Mara, for I went out full and I came out empty." The season is going to change both for Ruth and Naomi. The spiritual season, just like it was the season of harvesting, it was about to change. The spiritual season for Naomi and Ruth was also about to change. For whatever words they were speaking, they were declarations whom Naomi and Ruth were unaware of, that what plans God had made for them. What plans had God made for a widow, an old widow who had lost a husband, and a mother who had lost two sons, and what plans God could have made for Ruth, who was not worshipping the living God by now, but she declared and she said that your God will be my God, and who herself was a widow who had lost her husband. And later in chapter 2 we see that we meet a character called Boaz, who is from the family of Elimelech, that is Naomi's husband's relation. Okay, so there was a relationship that Boaz had with Elimelech's family. Okay, so that is how the chapter goes on, and we see that Naomi and Ruth are having a conversation, and Ruth goes to glean the fields, and she reaches a certain part of the land, where the land that belongs to Boaz. You can read chapter 2. Now that we know what kind of a woman Naomi was, we will see what kind of a woman Ruth was. And the reason why she went to glean the fields, if you read the chapter 2 verses 2, so Ruth the Moabitess said to Naomi, that is a mother-in-law, "Please let me go to the field." She's asking permission. "And glean heads of grains after him, in whose sight I might find favor." Favor. Ruth was going to find a favor. Wouldn't it be great if we found favor in the sight of God? Isn't that what we should pray, or people pray and ask God, that God, let your favor be upon me? Okay, and over here Ruth says to her mother-in-law that I might find favor. And Ruth did find favor, because the first thing she did is to declare that Naomi's God would be Ruth's God. And so she did find favor when she started gleaning in in the field of Boaz, and the servants brought the girl to Boaz, and there they have a conversation. And Boaz asks Naomi, "Who are you?" And Boaz comes to know the history of who Ruth is, and we read the story that what kind of a conversation Boaz and Ruth have. Okay, and the first thing that we notice in chapter 2 is that whatever conversation is taking place between Boaz and Ruth, Ruth is finding favor at each and every step. Okay, if I will bring your attention to the verse, okay, verses 8 onwards. Okay, then Boaz said to Ruth, "You will listen, my daughter." He addresses Ruth as daughter. uh, have I not commanded the young men not to touch you? And when you are thirsty, go to the vessels and drink from what the young men have drawn. Then she fell on her face, bowed to the ground, and said to him, "Why have I found favor in your eyes?" She's clueless. Boaz is also clueless, and Ruth is also clueless, and she's questioning, "Why have I found favor in your eyes? That you should take notice of me since I'm a foreigner." She was not from the land of Bethlehem. Remember that she was a woman who was from the land of Moab. And Boaz answered and said to her, "It has been fully reported to me." Now, Boaz has been fully reported who Ruth actually is, and all that you have done for your mother in law since the death of your husband, and how you came and you left your father and your mother and you did not return, but you came to our land. You chose us over them. So these are the favors that Ruth is finding. Also, verses 14, Boaz said to Ruth at mealtime, "Come here and eat of the bread and dip your piece of the bread in the vinegar." She sat beside the reapers, and she ate, and she kept some back till she was satisfied. Okay, this is another favor. Then he also Boaz also instructs his servants that let her I will just see that verse. Yes, verses 15. And when she rose up to glean, Boaz commanded his young men, saying, "Let her glean even among the sheaves, and do not reproach her, and let some grain fall into the bundles purposely for her. Leave it that she may glean, and do not rebuke her." So she gleaned in the field till the evening, and beat out what she had gleaned, and it was about an ephah of barley. And then she took it up and went to the city and into her mother-in-law and saw. And the entire story goes, then her mother-in-law asks Ruth, "Where did you go? Where did you find favor?" And she tells the entire story. Then Naomi tells Ruth, "Okay, the man that you meant is a relative of your father-in-law, of my husband Elimelech, and see what the Lord is going to do for you now." Now, in all of this, God is working over here. And do not remember, it was the season of harvesting. The season of our harvesting was changing not only for Naomi and Ruth, but also for Boaz, because Boaz till now was clueless of what is happening. Little did he know that there would be a girl coming to his field who would be related to him in some way or the other. And little did Naomi know that Ruth would be going into the fields of Boaz, and they would be having an interaction. So it was all in God's purpose. Like I said, the moment Ruth made a declaration that your people shall be my people, whose people was she talking about? She was talking about the people of Naomi, the people who worshipped the living God, the people from the house of bread, the people from the land of Bethlehem, and Boaz was from there. Boaz was related to Naomi's husband. And very soon, the God, the living God, that the people of Bethlehem worshipped, that we worship till today, was doing a great favor on Ruth, was doing a great favor on Naomi, and was about to do a great favor on Boaz as well. Okay, and later in verse 3, we see that uh, Naomi tells Ruth that a decision will be made. And since there was an old tradition that um, uh, the brothers of for instance, that Naomi's husband had died, so it was the responsibility for them to have a surrogate father. So Naomi, if she could have a husband from Elimelech, one of Elimelech's brother, so that was the rule in olden days. So over here, in verse 20, you will say, Naomi said to her daughter-in-law, "Blessed be he of the Lord, who has not forsaken his kindness to the living and to the dead." And Naomi said to her, "The man is a relative of ours, one of our near kinsmen." And Naomi said to her daughter in law, verse 22, "It is good, my daughter, that you go out with his young women, and the people do not meet you in any other field." So she stayed by the young women of Boaz to glean until the end of the day. Okay, now what happens now? Naomi suggests Ruth that she wash herself, clean herself, and go and sleep by the bed towards the feet of where Boaz was sleeping. And we read the story of what is happening. If you read the entire chapter verse by verse, you will see a lot is happening between Ruth and Boaz. And you will be surprised to know who Boaz is. And I will share that with you towards the end of the verse, because I don't want to drag it too much. I see the message is going too long. But to come back to Ruth, we see that the season has already started to change for Ruth. And also Boaz, in one of the verses, calls Ruth a virtuous woman. He calls that you are a virtuous woman. He's a woman. She's a virtuous woman because she did not leave her mother-in-law. She did not forsake her. She loved her. Even by this time, she was by her side and doing her responsibilities. She was eager to find favor so that she could feed herself and her mother-in-law. Boaz was very well aware. So in one of the verses, Boaz even calls Ruth a virtuous woman. And finally, a decision is being made where Boaz tells Ruth that if one of the relative of yours is not willing to sell up his land and to take you up as a wife, I will surely take you up as a wife. So in the end, we see that Boaz and Ruth are also, are about to get married. Now if I show you where the seasons have been changed, you could come directly to verses 14 and 15 of chapter 4. Okay, now we see a lot has happened between chapter 3 and 4, and I do not have the time to go through each verse, but I want to get to the main outline of the story, not to this just center of the story. The main outline of the story is that by now Ruth and Boaz have come closer and they have got married. Okay, so chapter 4 verses 14 and 15, we see by now that God has changed season for them. So Boaz took, verses 13 onwards, chapter 4. So Boaz took Ruth as she became his wife, and when he went into her, the Lord gave her conception, because by this time she had not conceived any sons from her first husband or children, and she bore a son. Then the women said to Naomi, "Blessed be the Lord, who has not left you to this day without near kinsmen, and may his name be famous in all Israel, and may he be to you a restorer." Naomi told women in Bethlehem, "Do not call me Naomi, call me Mara, for I am not pleasant anymore, I am bitter." But Lord changed the season for Naomi. We see that in verse 14, because she was being restored. God restored Naomi's situation. And see what a beautiful verse it is. May he be to you a restorer of life and a nourisher of your old age, for your daughter-in-law. Look at the words, the declaration, who loves you. Your daughter-in-law who loves you, who is better to you than 7 sons, has borne him. And Naomi took the child and laid him on her bosom and became a nurse to him. because she was not just a widow, she was not just a woman who had lost her sons, but now she had become a grandmother. And you can, of course, understand the joy grandparents have when they hold their children's children. But Ruth here, who is just not her daughter-in-law, but people claim her to be worth more than 7 sons. So even if Naomi had 7 sons, Ruth was far better than that. So this is how the harvesting season changed to a season of restoration for Naomi. Okay, again, remember the restoration for Ruth. Ruth made a declaration that your people shall be my people and your God shall be my God, and her declaration is completed, it is fulfilled. Okay, and the neighbor women gave him a name, saying, there is a son born to Naomi, and they call his name Obed. They call his name Obed. And if you know, Obed has a great history. Ruth made a declaration that your people shall be my people, and from here a generation of people has started, which leads them to the son Jesus Christ. Because Obed, when he grows big, he has a son named Jesse, and Jesse was the father of David. Okay, and David, if you have read your Bibles, you know that Jesus is also called the son of David, because Jesus was born in through the lineage of David. You can read that in Matthew chapter 1, where the whole genealogy is in described and explained. And it was a declaration that Ruth had made, that your people shall be my people. We are that people. She chose our living God rather than her pagan gods. And it is because of Ruth and Boaz that we have a history of Jesus Christ coming to this earth. We have a genealogy that I just mentioned that you can read in Matthew chapter 1, and you will understand how God works through patterns, how God works through a woman who did not know God, a woman who was from a pagan land, a woman who was clueless what she would do without a husband, a woman who chose to be with Naomi and chose and made a declaration that your people shall be my people and your God shall be my God, and where you go I will go, and where you will be buried I will be buried. And Naomi is also restored. And for Boaz, he became a husband, he became a father to Obed. And surprisingly, as I told you, you would be surprised to know who Boaz is. Boaz, a lot of detail has not been given about Boaz, but again, when you read the chapter of Matthew, you will read that Boaz was the son of Salmon, a man named Salmon, and Rahab. Rahab, yes, the same Rahab who helped the men, who helped the Israelites escape, who she hid the prostitute while they were going to attack the walls of Jericho. Rahab the prostitute bore the son named Boaz. Now, a lot of history is not given in the Bible, but there are bits and pieces that you need to deeply study. So, what is the outline of this entire chapter? What is the outline of the book of Ruth? That Ruth had a purpose. Her purpose came from her mother in law. Her mother in law led her to the promised land, and her mother in law took her to Bethlehem. Ruth made a declaration, and Ruth declared that your God will be my God and your people shall be my people. And Ruth met Boaz, and they together made children. And Obed was the first son, who had a son called Jesse, and Jesse had a son called David. For if Ruth and Boaz had not met, the lineage of David wouldn't have been there. And from the lineage of David, Jesus was born. Naomi led Ruth to the promised land, to the same promised land that is destined for you and for me. The main purpose of your people shall be my people and your God shall be my God was not only for Ruth's love for Naomi, but Ruth's declaration for you and me. for us to reach the promised land, for us to reach the promised land. For Ruth wouldn't have reached anywhere without Naomi. For Ruth wouldn't have reached to Boaz if the Holy Spirit wouldn't have led Naomi to go back to Bethlehem, to go back to the house of bread, to leave the land of Moab and come back to Bethlehem. So the story is not only about the relationship that Naomi and Ruth share, but it is the relationship they share with God first. For they both chose the living God. And Boaz also, in the fear of God, he did not make a hasty decision. If you read the chapter, he took the elders, he took the elders in the city, he took their confirmation, he took their permission, and then, in everybody keeping them as witness, he marries Ruth. Naomi, a widowed woman. Rahab, the mother of Boaz, a prostitute. God can take and lead and use anyone, any kind of a woman or anyone to lead people to the promised land. This message is called the branch of righteousness. And this branch of righteousness was prophesied by the prophet Jeremiah. I do not remember which chapter. Please do read the book of Jeremiah. There are many revelations for the coming of the Lord Jesus Christ way back thousands and thousands of years ago. And see how the prophet Jeremiah makes this prophecy, and how Ruth and Boaz meet, and how Ruth is the great grandmother of David. And from the lineage of David we see, and David was himself, he sinned. He fell into the pit so many times. He became a womanizer. He fell for women. He had his own weaknesses. God could have never chosen a clean. Wouldn't you think it would have been easy for God to choose a clean lineage and choose people who have never sinned their entire life? Just imagine the beauty and the revelation in all of this. I'm absolutely thrilled and absolutely mesmerized with what God had to share to me. God spoke to me in clear words that the story of Ruth is just not about how close Naomi and Ruth were. Of course, Ruth was a woman of virtue, but the story is about leading to the promised land. The story is that Naomi led Ruth to the promised land. I hope you understood, and I hope you enjoyed listening to this message, and I hope the Spirit of God speaks to you through this message. So thank you so much once again. Take care. Much love. God bless. Bye-bye.